Barbara Kemp. I've lived in Harvard for 44 years. I love it here, and I also love to bake. It's almost my favorite thing to do. And I'd like to share with you today a recipe that I found in Bon Appetit magazine in 1998. As I recall, it was one that was submitted by a reader, and she said it was served at some reception or some historical house tour, and I think it was in South Carolina. It was somewhere in the South, and it looked good to me, and I thought my grandchildren would like it. They don't like nuts. It doesn't have nuts. It's got a white chocolate coating. I knew they'd like that, and I ended up giving it away. I've given this away countless times. It's the biscotti recipe I make most, and makes a great gift, and
I can second that.
a nice presentation. This is my friend and neighbor Heidi Segrist, and she's had a few of these biscotti, and yeah, I can't keep them around the house because I'll eat them all, but giving them away is a good thing. So what I'd like to show you is how easy this is. People look at biscotti for sale in a coffee shop or whatever and think, whoa, I could never make that, but that's not true. It's really a cookie, a dry, stiff cookie that's baked twice, and that's really the only difference. The things that go into it aren't any different than things that you put in a cookie. So if you like to make them, you'll be good with biscotti. Let's start. So what you'll see me do is make a dough with flour, salt, baking powder, butter, eggs, almond extract, and dried cranberries. Oh, did I say sugar? That as well. But you'll see the recipe. Make it into a moderately stiff dough, shape it into logs, put it in the oven for 35 minutes at 350, take it out. The recipe says cool completely. I let it cool almost completely. If you handle it when it's too hot, the log's going to break. But I'm usually up against a deadline, so to get these out the door. So sometimes I push the rules a little. Once you've got the logs and they're relatively cool, you slice them. And my favorite thing is this bread knife, serrated bread knife. And actually what I do is, you'll see me, but I'll come down on it like that rather than this actually, so it's more of a cut. Then they're laid back on the same pan, cut side down, go back into the oven, and you're good to maintain the temperature of the oven while this is going on. Back into that 350 degree oven for 10 minutes. Out they come, and then, and this you do while they're relatively hot. My fingers are kind of immune to the temperature of them, but I suppose you could use a tongs or something, flip them over, and then back into the oven for another 5 minutes, and that's what crisps them up. When they're initially cut, you got to handle them carefully because they're soft, they're partially baked. And then once they come out, and I suppose what you really ought to do is wait for them to cool completely, and that's quicker than cooling the log because they're small. Then the recipe says use a fork to drizzle them with the hot chocolate, or with the white chocolate. I prefer just taking the chocolate and swiping the top of them and lay them out and let them firm up. And depending on the time of year and the temperature of the house, that can take a while. So we start out with a half cup of unsalted butter.
And is it softened?
Yes, in fact, this is really softened because it's summer.
Just
almost.
at room temperature?
Yeah. In the winter, sometimes I have to gently put it in the microwave and soften it up a bit. Otherwise, it's just bouncing all over the bowl.
And if you could tell me about this attachment.
That's the paddle attachment. It's the one you want to use for doughs
Okay.
and batters and things like that. Yeah. It doesn't have to be this kind of mixer. It could be any mixer that's sturdy enough to stand up to a relatively
But
stiff dough.
preferably a stand mixer, not a...
Not a portable. Yeah, that's right. So to this butter, I add a whole lot of sugar, 1.5 cups. And I'm not worried about adding it gradually because the butter is so soft. And fast enough that it combines, but not so fast that it flies out of the bowl. Okay, and that's looking good. And then 2 eggs. And truth be told, I never crack mine ahead, but just because today something could go wrong, I'm doing that. They say you should, I just don't. One at a time, like that. Oh wow. Until you get a nice fluffy batter. To this you add 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract.
Oh, do you have a favorite kind of almond extract?
Not particularly. This is Pansy's very good spice place. There's one in Arlington Heights, and you can mail order as well.
I think I've mailed.
Yeah, if you do that, you'll get their emails forever, but they're interesting. As long as you're using pure almond extract, I don't think it matters so much. And then to that, you add, this is 2.5 cups of flour, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and a teaspoon of baking powder.
Did you have to sift that together?
Mixed up. No, you don't sift. Do it with a whisk, just a little, just to make sure it's
And you're going to dump that in all at once?
Yeah, I do. Start that. No, 1.5 cups of dried cranberries. And I don't cut them up. I don't think that's necessary.
Where do you find, what section are dried cranberries? Are they like with the raisins or in the nut section?
They can be in the raisins, but depending on your store, you'll also find them in the produce section, like up above where all the vegetables are. And yeah, you find nuts there sometimes too. I shop at Market Basket. I find them in both those places.
And dried cranberries are different than craisins?
Nope, they're the same thing.
That's the same.
Craisins is ocean
A brand.
sprays.
Okay.
Yeah, like Band-Aids and you know,
Gotcha.
yeah. Okay, this comes out, and it looks like a cookie dough. One helpful little thing that I've learned over the years is I leave the butter wrapper on the counter, and then when I put my spatula down, it's something to put it on that doesn't leave a... Okay, that's enough. If I were doing this without the camera, I'd be more obsessive, but I'm not going to worry about that. This bench scraper is a handy thing to have too. I didn't think I needed one till I got one.
What's it called?
Bench scraper. Anything that might stick, boy, it'll help it. Now this comes a little hands-on here. Try to make it into a shape that I can easily divide in two. There you go. Put that aside for a minute. And then just again, just really lightly flour. And then you make it into a log, and the recipe says a 9.5-inch log. Sometimes, well, I used to get obsessive about it. I did put the ruler out there in case, but just 9.5 inches long, about 2.5 wide, and about 1 inch high, and then you're good. And this thing is helpful for getting underneath it. And this is my cookie baking sheet. That's a little longer than 9.5 inches, but that's okay. And I put these, this will come up against the side as it bakes, and that's okay because I've got parchment paper. Sometimes I'll put it on right on the silpat, which is that non-stick But last time I did these, they stuck a little to that, so I thought, let's
So
use...
that's not too close, that's okay.
No, it's okay. Yeah, it is okay. Maybe just a little. Okay. And then do the other one the same, and I think that maybe this one, well, we'll see. And it doesn't matter if they're not the same size. I used to obsessively weigh the pile of batter, then divide it, and then weigh each half. That's crazy. It's not necessary to do that. Okay.
So even if they're a little different, they have the same
Yeah.
baking time.
They do, yeah. And yeah, these are,
So why did you leave this middle? Why did you go to the sides?
so they'll spread.
Oh.
They will spread a little.
Okay.
And because this butter was so soft, this might spread a little more. But that's okay. The end product is going to be, let's make that a little flatter too, okay? It's going to be all
Well,
right.
these are made with a lot of love.
Oh yeah. And then,
Good
and
job.
then, the last step before they go into a 350-degree oven for 35 minutes is to brush them with egg white, and that's just to give a glossy finish to the outside. And
So how
because
many whites does this represent?
well, this is just water.
Oh.
I don't like to waste an egg yolk or put it aside and remember to put it in an omelet the next day. So I keep dried egg whites on hand just for this kind of purpose. I would never use them to make the meringue for a top of a pie or something like that. But to have an egg white to brush something, and you'd be surprised how many times that happens in a recipe, this is a really shelf-stable thing that you can find at any grocery store, and it's great. So 2 teaspoons of that dry stuff, which looks like this, and 2 tablespoons of water. Looks, when you start out, like it's not going to be anything, but persist, and before long, you get something that starts to look like an egg white beaten. So, then you just brush them. And you won't use all of this by any means, but, and this is a silicone brush, which is a handy thing to have. I also, before I got this, I used to use it was a couple of goose feathers, I think, tied tied with a string, and it was a very French thing, and that works too.
You're doing the sides and the top?
The sides and the top, yeah. And I try not to get this to spill it on the, because it can tend to run underneath the log, and I think that might be what made them stick a little bit when I used the seal pad. Yeah, we'll see. Okay, that's it. And if you're baking on a day that's not very humid, always a better day to bake, as my mother used to say, then you're going to get a higher product than if you bake on a rainy day. Her fudge recipe, I remember, started out with choose a dry day. So, in the oven. For 35 minutes, and then I always set a second timer for maybe 18 or 19 minutes to remind me to turn the pan.
So halfway through you turn the pan?
Yeah, so they bake evenly. And then you can go off and do something else for a while. Oh, actually no. You need to melt the white chocolate. I melted this earlier, and it has already firmed up. So I'm going to remelt, and there's no sin in that, on relatively low heat for the hot water. And I much prefer this method of melting to using the microwave. Because there you put it in, you take it out, you put it in, you take it out. This just sits here. And this will, as the water warms up, this will come back to what I want very quickly.
How much of this did you put in there?
6 ounces. And it's chunks of white chocolate. I buy it at Market Basket. Idlewild's got it too. It's good quality French white chocolate.
So that you do weigh?
Yes, I weighed it before on my kitchen scales. That's right. You could, I suppose you could melt white chocolate chips too, but I think chocolate chips sometimes have something in them to help them keep their shape, and you wouldn't want that if you were going to melt. Although I think, well, I like this better. So that's already starting to, and what I'll do is brush that on one of the cut sides of the biscotti. And then you're done, although in summertime it takes a good while for the white chocolate to set up. You can speed that up by putting it in the fridge if you've got room to stick a whole tray of biscotti in, or just by waiting. In the winter, no problem. Sometimes I'll take it to the garage and set it on the hood of the car, and in 15 minutes it's all firmed up. Yeah. So I'm in a rush to.
You're gonna spread that on before you slice the.
No. I'm sorry. I got a little ahead. This is the very last step. This is on the second, after the second baking. You know, and actually there are 3 bakings. There's this. You cut it up. You lay it cut side down. You bake it for 10 minutes. Then you take it out, turn it over, bake it for another 5. Then it's ready to have the white chocolate spread on it.
So it's the very end thing, and they're already sliced into what we think of biscotti looking like.
That's exactly right. And I can show you that too.
And then if you want to put them in special packages that I know you always do,
Oh yeah.
you have to make sure that that white chocolate's settled.
That's the whole thing. It's got to be set. And if you're storing them too, even though it's set, I think it's a good idea. Say you're putting them in some kind of storage plastic box, to put layers of wax paper between them. It's not a bad idea. So they go into the oven at 350 for 35 minutes. That's the first baking.
And halfway through you turn the pan.
Right. So when the timer goes off, you can see that they've spread a good bit, but not too much, and I don't think they're going to spread much more than that because they are firming up now. But you want a little bit of a golden brown on them, and that's going to take some more time. We're about halfway through the baking process. This is the white chocolate, nicely melted and thin, but not too thin.
Barbara, can you explain? I've never seen did you boil water in that flat pan?
No,
How did you do
I didn't
that?
boil it. I just put it on medium and let it. And if you hear the glass dish banging against the pan, that means your water is too warm. Turn it down. You don't really want it boiling. You want it. It's not even simmering really, but it's hot.
And how long about does that process, would you say, take?
It depends on how finely you've shaved or chopped your chocolate.
Oh, you shaved it like cheese?
No,
shaved?
no, with a knife.
Okay.
Big chunks take longer. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, the timer's gone off. It's been 35 minutes, actually a couple more minutes. You need to eyeball them, and I'll show you. This is just a nice color of golden. Leave the oven on and take them to a place where they can start to cool. Oh yeah, these are fine. Okay, so that is still quite warm.
Is it golden brown on the bottom?
What does it look like on the bottom? There we go. Yeah, it's nicely browned on the bottom. Here it is. It's still warm, but not so warm that I can't touch it. And we're good. As you can do a diagonal, you can do a straight. It's hard to decide with this one because I don't want them too long. When they're too long, sometimes the tips will break off. So I'm going to do these straight.
And how wide are you doing them?
No more than 1/2 inch, but not too skinny. Approaching 1/2 inch, I think, is a good... the recipe says you'll get 28. I have gotten closer to 3 dozen. So somewhere between 28 and 3 dozen.
So you're going down gently and then doing a little
Yeah,
sauce?
I'm doing, yeah. I just want to, because if you haven't separated those cranberries, you know, when you go to pick them up, they won't separate. Now these are ready to go back in for 10 minutes.
You left your oven on that whole time?
That's right. And otherwise you would have had to heat it up again. The recipe says hold the temperature. And there's no, oh, what do these look like? 10 minutes is fine before they come out and get flipped to the other side.
And you were in the middle rack in the oven. Does it matter? You want to be in the center of your oven?
In my oven, yes, it's better in the center. Everything works better in the center of my oven, except for broiling. Yeah. Excuse me. So the timer's gone off after 10 minutes, and out they come. Not looking that much different, but crisped up somewhat, especially on the underside. I usually just dive right in and start turning them over. Gently, though, because they're warm and they're delicate still. And if you put them on all facing one way, you'll know whether you've turned them or not, because they'll all be facing the other way. And now, back into that same 350-degree oven, but just 5 minutes this time. Out they come. So now, and you're probably going to want to wait a little bit. So these are cool now, and I don't know whether you can tell, but they've got a little shine to the edge, and that's from the egg white. So just a little white chocolate. And so it oozes over a little, that doesn't matter.
If I find that it's not spreading, do I need to heat it up a little bit more?
Probably. You want it just about this thick. And the recipe that you'll get says to use a fork and kind of sprinkle, or, you know,
Drizzle?
drizzle. That sounds messy to me. I like this better and you get more chocolate. So, Christmas time I've sometimes put some colored sprinkles on top, but really doesn't need that. You've got the red from the cranberry.
And the 6 ounces of chocolate will do both logs?
Yes, in fact, even a little less sometimes. But what I do is just whatever's left over, scrape it into a little plastic container, stick it, don't cover it until it is cool, stick it back in the cupboard where I keep the chocolate that I've never used yet, combine them all. It doesn't seem to be a problem to
Use it again.
use it again. Yep.
Huh.
And I don't want to waste anything, so. Yep. And this is the process that, the drying process that's going to take a while.
When you say it's going to take a while for this to dry, what's your guesstimate on a while?
Oh gosh. In winter, summer, big difference, room temperature, and also how thickly I've spread it. You know, sometimes I'm more generous than others.
Are we talking minutes or hours?
Oh, on the extreme, it can take a couple of hours. In fact, sometimes I have just, when it's almost done, you know, kind of gathered them up and stuck them in the fridge just to get them. Because once they firm up, then they're going to be as firm as the pieces that I chopped up to melt. But
Do I need to heat it up a little bit more?
probably. You want it just about this thick. And the recipe that you'll get says to use a fork and kind of sprinkle, or, you know,
Drizzle?
drizzle. That sounds messy to me. I like this better and you get more chocolate. So here they are, a presentation on the lovely Biscotti tray. And here they are, ready to give away. Now, you can put any number in the bag you want, tie it with a ribbon, and you've got a great gift. A hostess gift, or a gift for no reason at all. So keep them for yourself. Better yet, give them away. I hope you enjoy them. I know you will.
Of all the different variations of biscotti, of which I have been so glad to be the recipient of, is it still the basic same process? Or if something has nuts or other, I'm trying to think what other things we've enjoyed, how much does it alter what you've showed us today?
The big difference is whether there's butter or not, whether there's shortening or not. I've got a recipe I adore.
Without butter?
Yeah. That came out of a book called The Joy of Coffee by a guy named Corby Kummer. You hear him on the on GBH radio every week. He's great, and he calls this unbeatable biscotti, and all the fat comes from the 3 eggs. So those are really crisp, and those you have to dip or you'll break your teeth. But they're wonderful. They soften up right away when you drip them. Those are great. And I toyed with making those instead, and they have almonds in them, lots of almonds. But that's a really sticky dough, and it wouldn't have made into logs nearly as easily as this did. So in the end, I chose this one. But there's a cinnamon mocha biscotti that my grandson adores. I make a lot, and it's got butter, and it has little mini cinnamon and chocolate chips in it, and instant coffee, for instance. I've made a cardamom biscotti. I make gingerbread biscotti for the holidays. Just, I've got a book.
Would you
Lots of
say that
recipes,
what
any
we
kind.
saw today is a good foundation as if people start
This would be a
exploring?
good one. This would be a good one to start with. Yeah, it really would, because the dough is user friendly. Some are stickier than others. I mean, it just means you've got to either have wet hands or use more flour. But as I said, I chose this one because I knew it would go together easier. It would behave. That's right. I could trust it.